I truly was in the Australian outback, living in the part of Australia that they warn you about with the deadly snakes and the spiders and the crocodiles and all of it. Is this thing on? Hi friends, welcome to my first YouTube video. That's kind of crazy. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Marissa and I'm from the US, specifically California. And I've been living in Australia for about a year and a half now. And I know you're not really supposed to make YouTube videos about yourself when you're first starting out and trying to grow an audience, but I really want to create videos to help others discover that there are ways to experience living in new places, even if it's only temporary. And I think it's important to show my credentials because I'm doing it. When I meet other travelers, I love hearing their background story and like what led them to start traveling. So here's mine. Welcome to Marissa's Australia chapter. Grab a coffee or your preferred beverage of choice and let's dive right in. Story time. So my Australia journey really starts in November of 2022 when I got laid off from my third job in just over 2 years. I was working a few different jobs in corporate America, as you do after getting a bachelor's degree. And I was feeling really burnt out. I felt like I was giving my all in all of my jobs, and I had been laid off 3 times to no fault of my own. It was just the economy or the company restructuring, and I just felt like another number. So I felt like I really needed a change of pace, and I wanted to do something different, but I just didn't know what that was. So one night I'm scrolling on TikTok, as I do, and a video pops up about the Australia work and holiday visa, and I had no idea that that existed. So I started looking into it more and decided that that was something I wanted to do. I was kind of coming to this point where my apartment lease was about to be up if I didn't want to renew it. Same with my car. I was leasing a car at the time and I didn't have a job. So I just felt like this was a good opportunity for me to take a leap like this. And if it didn't work out, I could always come home. So I got my passport renewed. I applied for the visa and got approved and booked my flight to Australia. So I actually waited a little bit just to wait all of those things out that I previously said, my apartment lease, and obviously it takes a lot of brain power and logistics to move to another country. So wanted to give myself plenty of time to sort all of that stuff out. And I do plan on making videos that kind of break down that process. But I actually moved to Australia in July of 2023. So like many other people, I knew that I wanted to start my journey in Australia, either in Melbourne or Sydney. And when I compared flights from LA at the time that I wanted to go, Melbourne was a bit cheaper than Sydney, so I just decided Melbourne was the place. I actually booked a tour when I first got here with a company called Welcome to Travel. This is not sponsored. I just want to sing the praises of Welcome to Travel because I think that they really helped me get set up in everything in Australia. They helped me open a bank account. They helped me get my tax file number, which is similar to your social security number if you're an American, and really just helped me feel like I had support with like during my time here in Australia, even if it was for a month or now coming up on a year and a half. Like I can still go back to Welcome to Travel whenever, and I feel like I have a network of support, which is so nice. So I made some friends during the Welcome to Travel tour, and we did a road trip down the Great Ocean Road and to the Grampians in Victoria, which was really cool, and so much fun, so many memories from that trip. And I can't believe that was well over a year ago now that happened. Crazy how time flies. But yeah, after that trip, I liked Melbourne well enough to decide like, okay, let me try to get settled here. So, and at that point I was out of a job 8 months. So I really just was craving routine. So I did it. I found a place to live. I found a job. I worked in cafes for the time that I was in Melbourne, which was about 5 months. I was in Melbourne from end of July 2023 to January 2024, like end of January. Melbourne has a huge coffee culture, if you weren't aware. So I thought that that was the best way for me to really immerse myself into Melbourne. And I was right. And now I have a coffee addiction because of it. But it was so much fun. I learned so much about myself. I made so many good friends through the cafe. And yeah, it was a really, really great time. And then during that time, I really did fall in love with Melbourne. I know that it gets a bad rep because of the back and forth weather and like not having nice beaches, but I love it. I love Melbourne. So much so that I am back in Melbourne as I'm making this video in January of 2025, but we'll get there. So after I left Melbourne, I did the backpacker thing to do and I traveled the east coast of Australia. So I flew from Melbourne to Sydney, where I took another tour with Welcome to Travel. It was a bit different though because it was a semi-guided tour. So basically everything was set up. I just had to get myself to the right place at the right time. And because I wasn't sure what exactly I wanted to experience on the Australian East Coast, I had a few things in mind. I just didn't quite know what I wanted to do. I think this was the best route for me because I got to hit all of the major spots and experience things that I probably wouldn't have done on my own. So we went from Sydney to Byron Bay, and then Byron Bay to Surfers Paradise, Surfers Paradise to Brisbane, and then we also did a day trip to Bribie Island while we were in Brisbane. That was really cool. Brisbane to Noosa and the Noosa Everglades. And that's actually where I spent my 30th birthday, which was really fun. Never thought that I would spend my birthday surrounded by kangaroos. And then from Noosa, we went to Rainbow Beach. And then from Rainbow Beach, we went to Gari. And that was actually my first experience camping. And turns out I really liked it. And then from there, we went to Airlie Beach and the Whitsundays, which is just beautiful. Whitehaven Beach is one of the most photographed beaches in the world and super famous. Snorkeled the Great Barrier Reef, flew over the Great Barrier Reef, crazy, so beautiful. That was probably my favorite part of the trip, potentially, next to the camping. Then from Airlie Beach, we went to Magnetic Island. And then from Magnetic Island, we went to Cairns. And that's where I attempted to scuba dive. And it didn't go so well. But that's a story for another day. So yeah, I'd love to break down all of the activities that I did in all of those places. But I think I want to keep this video a little bit more of a summary. So I will save that for later. So after the East Coast, I flew back to Sydney for a little while. And actually one of my very good friends from back home came to visit me, and we had a few days in Sydney together, and that was incredible. It was so nice to see somebody from back home. And that leads me to April. That's when she left, and then my family came to visit. I really didn't think that my family would ever make it over to this side of the world just because my mom has a fear of flying. And Australia is pretty much as far away from the US as you can get. So she endured the 15-hour flight, and we went on a 10-day cruise up the east coast of Australia. So I've done the east coast via land and via sea at this point. But cruising is my parents' preferred way of traveling. So my parents and my younger brother came to visit, and it was really great. Obviously, at that point, I hadn't seen them since July. So it was now April. So it was a long time for us to be away from each other. And yeah, I'm just really grateful that they made the journey all the way to the other side of the world to hang out with me. So, kind of in the background while I'm traveling, this is end of January through end of April that I was doing all of these activities. I was also preparing for my 88 days, and I know that that doesn't make any sense to anyone who doesn't know anything about the work and holiday visa in Australia. But basically, I didn't want to leave Australia after my 1 year on my work and holiday visa. And that meant I needed to complete a work requirement in order to apply to extend my visa for another year. And the reason it's referred to as your 88 days is because you have to work for 3 months in a remote area of Australia in specific industries. And all of that is pretty complicated to get into in this video, but I do want to make a video about this later as well. But basically, the 88 days are the sum of days in the shortest 3 months of the year. So, in the work and holiday community, the work requirement to extend your visa is known as your 88 days. So, I was really pushing it with my 88 days. I had 93 days to complete my 88 days, which is not recommended by anyone and not by me either. But in my defense, I moved to Australia when I was 29. I turned 30 here. The age limit for the work and holiday visa for US citizens is 30. So I thought in my mind, I wasn't eligible to extend my visa another year. And that's because I want to also do a year work and holiday in New Zealand, which also has an age limit of 30, but that's also another story for another day. So all this to say is I basically didn't find out that I could actually do my 88 days until I had all of this travel booked and my family was coming, and I had pretty much a week to find a job before starting my travels. And I put all of my eggs into one basket and it worked out for me, which is crazy. I told myself that if that one job worked out, that it was the universe telling me that Australia for another year was for me. So I got super lucky, like extremely lucky. And the day that my parents left is the day that I moved to the middle of nowhere to start this job. So when I say remote work, I truly mean remote work. Like, think of the most remote place that you've been to and probably double it, maybe even triple it. And that is where I was living. I truly was in the Australian outback, living in the part of Australia that they warn you about, with the deadly snakes and the spiders and the crocodiles and all of it. That was my home for 5 months, even. Like, not even just 3 months, that was my home for 5 months. I'm making it sound really bad, but it actually was such a good experience and something that I would have never done, obviously, if I wouldn't have had this work requirement. So I got super lucky. I got an office job for my 88 days, which is kind of unheard of. Like, most people who do their 88 days end up doing farm work. And the reason that I didn't even attempt to apply for any farm work was because I had such a short window of time to complete my 88 days, and farm work is not guaranteed work every single day. And one of the requirements is you have to work full time. So I really needed a job that wasn't farm work. Moved to a region of Australia called the Kimberley, which is on the border of Western Australia and Northern Territory. So I was living in a place called Lake Argyle, and it is a massive tourist destination. I moved there end of April, and I was there through the peak tourist season. So throughout winter, the region of the Kimberley becomes a really big tourist hotspot because it stays warm all year round, basically. And that's the best time to go up there because the heat isn't so unbearable that you're going to have a miserable time. And it's not rainy season. So and I was working for a lake cruise company out there, and it was a really great experience, like I said. I think a lot of the perks of the 88 days are most of the time your accommodation is included in your job, which it was the case for me. I did have accommodation provided for me. And you get to save a lot of money because you're in a really remote place and there's not much to spend your money on. Um, and that was the case for me. I will be 100% transparent, and I will say that I saved 23,000 Australian dollars in 5 months, which is unreal. Like I said, I was working actually more than full-time hours. I was working probably average around 41, 42 hours a week. And I didn't have any bills to pay besides my cell phone bill. So basically, I got my 88 days done, and I stayed longer in Lake Argyle because I did sign a contract saying that I would stay through the peak tourist season, which was until end of September. So I got my visa renewed in July, end of July of 2024. And I stayed in Lake Argyle until the end of September. Actually, I left the first week of October. Like I said, it was a great experience. Made so many friends, got to live the slow life for a little bit, especially after traveling for a few months. Yeah, and save some money. It was really nice. I want to go more in depth about that experience, but that'll be for another video. So it's October and I left Lake Argyle and I actually flew back to the US just to spend some time at home with family and friends. When I first came back, I flew into Sydney for a night and then flew into Melbourne, and I moved into a new apartment. So I moved back to Melbourne because I really just missed the city and the diversity that comes with living in the city after being in the middle of nowhere in the outback for a while and not having any restaurants and being 45 miles from the grocery store. So I moved into a new apartment and then immediately went on another trip. So end of November, I went to Tasmania, and I went with a couple of friends that I met in the Kimberley. So we hired a camper van and we drove around the entirety of Tasmania for about 2.5 weeks and went camping and saw all of the sights and went hiking, and it was just so much fun. I am so grateful for that trip. It was amazing. And I highly recommend that anyone visiting Australia visit Tasmania as well. Huge advocate for Tasmania now. It is so stunning. No matter what kind of vacation you want to have, I feel like you would find it in Tasmania for sure. And then after Tasmania, I flew back to Melbourne and I've been here ever since. It's now mid-January when I'm filming this, and I am still trying to get my bearings in Melbourne. I've been spending a lot of time with friends, catching up, and also spending a lot of time with one of my really close friends who I actually inspired to do the work and holiday visa as well. She's also from the US, and I think that's kind of why I'm starting to make these videos. I just want to help put some more information out there to show people that it is possible to move to Australia if you want to. And Australia is not the only opportunity. I feel like the longer I stay abroad, the more things that I hear about and the less I kind of want to go home. But we'll see, we'll see. So that's my journey so far in Australia. I really have no idea what the future looks like for me. I'm kind of living day by day at this point. And it's exciting and scary and all the things. But I really, really thank you if you've made it to the end of this video. I know that this was not as succinct as it probably could have been, and I'm still getting used to talking to the camera. This is my first video, so thank you so much if you've made it to the end of this video. And If you have any questions about moving to Australia, feel free to drop them in the comments. I'm also on Instagram, so you can find me there and we can have a chat if you'd like. And yeah, thank you so much again. If you are interested in learning more about moving to Australia or just curious about my journey now that you've heard the whole thing, feel free to hit that subscribe button and I will see you in the next video. Bye.